This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
We begin today's show in the occupied West Bank, where Israeli forces have arrested at least 15 Palestinians after another night of raids, even as Israeli settlers attack Palestinian homes north of Jericho and use bulldozers to level Palestinian farmers' crops south of Nablus. The settler violence came as the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, visited an Israeli settlement in the West Bank after an unannounced visit to Israel with other Republican lawmakers. Israeli settlements are illegal under international law, but Johnson used his visit to declare, quote, "The mountains of Judea and Samaria are the rightful property of the Jewish people," unquote. Meanwhile, family members of a U.S. citizen who was killed in a settler attack in the West Bank last week are demanding the Trump administration open investigation into his death. 40-year-old Kami Sayad asphyxiated after settlers set fire to cars outside his home Thursday. He died trying to put out the flames after Israeli soldiers arrived and fired tear gas in his direction. Ayad is a former Chicago resident. He leaves behind 5 children. He's at least the second U.S. citizen killed in the West Bank since July. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities are continuing to refuse to release the body of the Palestinian activist Oda Hadalin, who was fatally shot by an Israeli settler last Monday in the occupied West Bank. Israel's also still detaining 7 members of his family. 60 Palestinian women from the village of Khir began a hunger strike Thursday to demand justice. Hadalin worked on the Oscar-winning film No Other Land. Meanwhile, Israeli authorities have released the settler accused of killing Hadalin, Inon Levy. He had been under house arrest. Earlier this year, the Trump administration lifted Biden-era sanctions on Levy. This is Oda Hadalin's uncle, Ibrahim, speaking the day after his nephew was killed.
After October 7, we have been undergoing difficult times that include land annexation, prevention of hurting, preventing people from accessing their lands, attacking people directly, sometimes even killings, like what happened to the martyr Odeh. All these procedures that we have been through are all tools of the settlers so that they could annex the land and empty it from its people.
For more, we're joined by 2 guests. Basel Adra, co-director of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, a Palestinian activist and journalist who writes for 972. He spent years documenting Israeli efforts to evict Palestinians living in Masafer Yatta, south of Hebron. Oda worked with him and Yuval Abraham on the film. He was also a close friend of Oda Hadalin. And in Hebron, Ty Kavanaugh is a former U.S. Navy medic who's a medical student at the University of Limerick, an international volunteer working with Palestinian public health groups in the occupied West Bank. Last Monday, he was in Khir when Oda Hadalin was shot and killed. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Ty, if you can start off by telling us the scene that day, if you can talk about what happened to Oda.
Yes, I arrived there that day just by coincidence. I just wanted to visit his village because I've been doing clinics in Masuyata in the area. A friend of mine who runs Project Walsh, he happened to know people there. I figured I'd tag along with him. We get out of the car. 15 minutes later, the bulldozer doing like construction starts driving through their crops. People go out to try to wave it off and stop it. A man from the village is struck in the head and shoulder by that bulldozer. Myself, an American nurse, and a Palestinian nurse are trying to treat him, at which point gunfire starts. And then seconds later, people start yelling that Ada's been shot, at which point we treat him. Very quickly, we try to take him to the settlement to get an ambulance at that gate. We lose a pulse. We're starting CPR on him. Meanwhile, I later learned I didn't see who the shooter was when it happened, but I later recognized the shooter as a guy who was just milling around, just standing over us while we were doing CPR. Many of the settlers, especially those teenagers type, were jeering and laughing at us. I don't understand Hebrew, but they were sure they were yelling all kinds of things at us. Myself and the Palestinian medic are told to leave. The American nurse is detained and later deported by Israeli authorities for God knows what their excuses for that. The moment I had done treating the wounded and told to leave, I turn around and I see, I don't know what I expected. I thought the seriousness of that would cause a change in behavior, but the IDF is immediately just attacking the villagers. I see people blindfolded and handcuffed. Everyone's being penned in, and they're just they seem like they're trying to pen everybody in and just antagonize people. They want them to throw rocks. They wanted an excuse to do stuff, and they were just dragging people out. And I see Levy pointing out people too, and the IDF just goes in, drags them away. At one point, all the internationals, and most of the internationals are detained by the IDF. Of course, I'm covered in blood. Literally, I'm covered in blood. They did not ask me a single question about what happened. The only thing they started doing is looking at my visa and passport and screaming about my immigration status because they look at the wrong date. Yeah.
We're showing images, by the way, of Inon Levy waving his gun, the gun that they said he used to kill Oda. Juan?
And yes, I wanted to ask you, Ty, you're saying that the IDF soldiers never asked you any questions about what actually had happened, but then began to actually target the victims rather than the perpetrator?
Yes, of course. No, at no point was anyone who was anyone who was Palestinian or not a settler asked any question about what happened. That was not important to them. What was important was going after the people in the village, and they were trying to find excuses to arrest international observers or volunteers or the people who happened to be there. No, I myself happened, just by coincidence, I was doing a clinic in Umm today, and we're seeing the injuries of the people who were released, that were beaten and held in stress positions while they were detained, and all the women who are still on hunger strike and their health conditions.
I'd like to bring in Basel Adra, also co-director of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. Could you talk to us about what has happened in the past few days, especially with Oda Hadolan?
It has been crazy since shot our closest friend Auda and killing him. Israeli occupation soldiers have been invading the Morn tent day after day, forcing journalists, solidarity activists, and Palestinians like me, who's not residents of Khair village, to go out of the village, and they arrested activists from there. That happens during the day, and during the night, the army come again and invade the community, arresting people for 3 nights, arresting residents, Auda's brothers, cousins, and other relatives, accusing them of throwing stones, while the settler who killed Auda is free, and yesterday he was able to be back to work and to dig and to provocate the villagers and the family of Auda next to basically expanding the illegal settlement of Carmel into the village right next to Auda's family homes and community center.
Basel, our deepest condolences on the loss of your dear friend Oda. You worked together on your film, the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. If you can talk more about Inon Levy, the violent Israeli settler, very well known, who we've been showing waving his gun, who the eyewitnesses say just opened fire on Oda, was taken, then put under house arrest, and even as Oda's family remains arrested, he has been freed. If you can explain the movement right now, the 60 women who are on hunger strike. I covered a big protest in New York last night. Oda's name was raised repeatedly.
Yeah, Auda was our close friend. He was a father for three beautiful kids. He was an English teacher. He hosted all the time solidarity activists from the US, from all over the world, who come to Masafir Yatta, to Al Khair, and tell the story of his village, of our villages. They've been traveling to different countries around the world to talk about Al Khair, about his story, the story of the community of Masafir Yatta, the threats that we're all facing. So he was the voice of the community. He was an activist that filming what's happening. He filmed his own death when shot him. He was a person that optimistic, that liked the life, and he was really planning for a beautiful future. He dreamed for a beautiful future. He was 35 meters away from this criminal, Levy, and he was standing with his son in a small basketball playground in the village when shot him. Inon is a settler that created an illegal outpost in 2021 next to Zenuta village here in the South Hebron Hills, and kept attacking Zenuta and the village of Zenuta day after day, night after night, destroying crops, attacking shepherds, going to people's homes, smashing properties like solar panels, water pipes, cars as well, attacking sheep and shepherds as well, the families in the houses, threatening people if they don't flee, they would die there. So 250 people who have been living in that village called Zanuta have fled for their life from and the settlers with him in that illegal outpost.
Now,
That's why.
Basel, he has been released, but the body of Ulda has not been, which means you can't have a funeral. Can you talk about the significance of this? Where is the Israeli military keeping his body?
We don't know where they keep his body for sure. Somewhere in some hospital, they're refusing to release his body unless the family would bury him outside of his village, just with the participation of 15 people, and he would be buried during the night, which the family rejected at all. They're saying Auda was not a criminal. He was an activist. He was killed in a crime, and he deserved a funeral where all of us, all of his friends, all of his family would attend, and would be grief in a grave that's in his village, and close to the family as they are asking. So his wife, mother, and other 60 women from his community are now since Thursday in a hunger strike, protesting the Israeli authorities holding Auda's body. And not just that, yesterday, as I said, I've been able to come back to the village next to Auda's brother's house to dig again for the expansion of the illegal settlements. They brought him there in a provocate the families. I mean, he just killed their son 1 week ago, and now we're able to come and work again with a bulldozer next to their houses, while the body of Auda, their son, is not released.
And Basel, could you talk about the general situation in the West Bank as Israel continues its genocidal war in Gaza? The situation with the increasing settler attacks on the West Bank, in the occupied West Banks, where do you see this going?
Well, the story of Auda is not isolated. As you know, nine Palestinians have been killed since the beginning of the year with the in settlers attacks, killed by Israeli settlers. This is not random attacks happening here and there. There are daily attacks and harassments and expansion of illegal settlements and outposts on our land, and attacking Palestinian communities. This is a policy. This is a state policy, like Israel. Other policies of destroying our homes, our infrastructure, like the policy of closing the West Bank, closing cities and towns. So everything is escalating here under the shadow of the genocide that's happening in Gaza. Israel is using the policy of settlers' violence, as I said, the policy of expansion of the Israeli settlements, the destruction of our own communities, like the village of Khalt Dabi and Mayit have been totally destroyed by Israeli bulldozers. and they continue with this to annex our land. Basically, they want as much as they can of our land, and they want to ethnic cleansing us as much as they can.
Basel, Adra, I want to thank you for being with us, co-director of the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, dear friend of Oda Hadalin, whose body is being kept by the Israeli military, and Ty Kavanaugh, former U.S. Navy medic, international volunteer working with Palestinian public health groups in the occupied West Bank. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.